showed you last hour how President Obama today sat down with law enforcement officers from 3 communities rocked by recent mass shootings. Mr. Obama meeting with police chiefs from more than a dozen communities, including Aurora, Colorado, Oak Creek, Wisconsin, and Newtown, Connecticut, asking them to help him in his efforts to convince Congress to pass gun control legislation. But there are new concerns that the president may be deploying other tactics to get what he wants, including federal agencies, to push his anti-assault weapons agenda. This just days after we learned that his former chief of staff, now Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel, may be getting some federal help in his effort to pressure private banks that do business with America's gun industry. Jay Sekulow is the chief counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice. What the news was the other day, Jay, that Rahm Emanuel is now reaching out to big banks, Bank of America, TD Bank directly, and pressuring them not to do business with some of our largest gun manufacturers. Here's my question for you. You've got a public official interfering with private contractual rights between these entities, rights that are protected by the Second Amendment, by the way, and arguably the First Amendment, their viewpoints on gun control. Is that legal?
No, I don't think so. I think, number one, the mayor needs to be careful that it isn't engaged in tortious interference with business. It's one thing if you're the mayor of Chicago and you say, you know what, our retirement funds for our Chicago employees will not be invested in manufacturers of guns. That's one thing. You can make that decision. But to interfere with the contractual relationship between Bank of America, or any other bank for that matter, and a manufacturer of an item, here, guns, that are protected by the Second Amendment, and to interfere with their contractual relationship, their funding, looks like tortious interference with business. I mean, is he calling for a boycott? That's one thing, and again, that would raise serious issues, but here he's actually saying, don't keep those business relationships going, please, period. Not that Chicago won't do business with their pension funds investing, that they can make that decision. Chicago can make that decision. We're not going to invest in this particular enterprise. But to tell the private bank of those businesses that you're going to, we want you to stop doing business with those lawful businesses, I'm not sorry, tortious interference with business, and I think it could be a big problem for the mayor, and it's going to backfire, actually. I think the reality is this could really hurt with their efforts they're trying to do here, because this is such a huge overreach.
Well, that's the thing. If the banks agree, and so far we don't have a report of that. We don't know what they're deciding. This is just happening. But if they agree to do it, then these gun manufacturers will argue that they have been damaged. And it was a direct result, they'll say, of the tortious interference of the Chicago mayor. But separate and apart from that, Jay, I want to ask you, because Rahm Emanuel got in trouble with the ACLU. I mean, the ACLU is not exactly known for defending the most conservative causes, but remember when he tried to stop Chick-fil-A from doing business in the city of Chicago because its owners spoke out against gay marriage? And the ACLU said, Mayor Emanuel, that's viewpoint discrimination. You're a public official, and you can't discriminate against a group like Chick-fil-A because of the beliefs held by Chick-fil-A's owners. Now, he doesn't control the banks right now. He can't say, we're not doing business. But isn't it, again, a public official trying to extract a punishment on the gun manufacturers for their beliefs? Because what he's saying is, you need to get on board with the president's gun control proposals. You don't have to stop manufacturing guns, but you have to support his proposals. Otherwise, I'm going to try to cut off your banking access.
Yeah, and he's doing this. Remember, he's the third party going in to interfere with this business relationship. And, Megan, you brought up the viewpoint discrimination issue. I actually argued that case at the Supreme Court of the United States in the early 90s, and it was unanimous. The liberal members of the court, the most conservative, all 9 said, viewpoint discrimination is unconstitutional. And that's exactly what's going on here. Could you imagine if in the 1950s and 60s, those that were opposed to civil rights tried this? They said, if you do business with the black community, we're going to not engage in your business, we're going to boycott your business. That didn't work out very well for those government leaders that were trying to do that. And those were rights that were protected by the Constitution for minority citizens of our country, for black Americans. And the idea that you would take a constitutionally protected right and use it as its own weapon, if you will, by saying, if you do business with these companies, banks, well, you're going to have a price to pay. What are they going to do, cut off the business relationship? Chicago going to threaten that we won't do business with these banks if they do business with a third party? This is really dangerous stuff.
It's one thing when you have a private citizen do it, right? It would be one thing if the citizenry wrote to Bank of America and said, we don't want you to do business with any gun manufacturer until they get on board with President Obama's proposals.
Free speech.
But when you have an elected official, you've got the government basically coming in and strong-arming somebody, that raises it to another level, does it not, Jay? And it sets a precedent that the other side may be very unhappy with when there are different people in power.
And it may be different issues. I mean, we're talking about the Second Amendment today, but it could be something else. I mean, this idea that the government would come in and interfere with a third-party relationship. You've got two parties here. You've got three with the government. You've got the government, Rahm Emanuel, coming in, telling the bank that, not his bank, but the bank that is doing business with a protected activity, don't do business with them anymore because we don't like it. You know, I said they tried that in the 50s and 60s, and it didn't work out too well for them. So the fact of the matter is this whole idea that you can interfere with these constitutional rights this way, I'm sorry, he's way over a line here. I think he's creating tremendous legal liability, and it's not helping the president's position at all.
Well, we'll see. We'll see whether they raise any sort of challenge and what the banks wind up doing. Jay, great to see you.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks for having me.